I still remember the way the desert felt that night. The air was colder than it should have been, dry but sharp, as if every breath carried sand into my lungs. The moon hovered low, pale and heavy, and the stars above looked strangely blurred, like I was staring through a thin veil of smoke. My headlights cut across the empty road, and every mile deeper into the desert made the world around me feel less real. There was no sound, just the faint hum of my engine and the hollow silence pressing in from all sides. The cactus and stones seemed frozen, too still like they were listening. My chest felt tight, as if something unseen was waiting just beyond the reach of my lights. I told myself it was only the desert, lonely, endless, and quiet, but a part of me knew better. That was when I noticed the figure in the distance, standing perfectly still in the middle of the road. It looked like a man, but its limbs were too long, its neck bent at an impossible angle. I slowed, heart pounding, and for a moment I thought it raised its hand, beckoning me forward. I never should have stopped. The desert stretched endlessly, pale dunes curling beneath the moonlight. Night pressed heavy, the air dry and metallic. Tires whispered over the back road as I drove, wind pressing soft against the windows. The radio flickered. Static hummed low, then a voice, soft, deliberate, whispering my name. Not once, not twice, but again and again, stretching through the crackling waves of sound. I reached for the dial. The signal cut out abruptly. Only static now. Empty. The car slowed. I looked out across the sand. Shadows moved, impossible shapes curling over the dunes. Then I saw them. Footprints, circling the car, fresh, deep pressed into the sand. No one there. Yet they marked every rotation, endless and deliberate. Wind pressed the dunes against the tires. The air smelled faintly of dust and ozone. Each breath felt heavy, close, metallic. I stepped out slowly, feet crunching in fine sand. The footprints circled nearer, patient, deliberate. I followed the trail with my eyes. No figure. Only sand shifting in impossible angles beneath the moon. The radio hummed softly. Static whispered faint fragments of words, unintelligible but aware. Each blink revealed slight movements around the car. Shadows bending at the edges of vision, patient. I walked carefully. Sand pressed cool underfoot, grains sharp and alive. Footprints continued to circle, reflecting my steps. I tried to run my hand through the air. Nothing. Yet awareness lingered. Time stretched. Minutes folded over miles. The wind carried whispers faintly, brushing against my ears. The dunes shifted slightly, soft curves forming and dissolving as if breathing. I felt it then. Not a person. Not an animal. Something aware. Watching. Moving in tandem with the sand, with the air, with the quiet. The footprints stopped abruptly. Silence pressed. Only the wind, the hum of tires, the faint crackle of the radio. I returned to the car. Every step echoed softly, matching some rhythm in the desert. The engine hummed beneath me, low and alive. The radio cut in one last time. A whisper. My name. And then, nothing. I drove on. Alone. The dunes stretched endlessly. Footprints vanished behind me. But I knew. They would return, patient, silent, watching. Night pressed heavy over the desert. Wind drifted faintly across the trail, stirring sand into soft eddies. My flashlight's beam cut narrow through the darkness, revealing jagged rocks and scattered cacti. I was hiking alone, feet crunching softly against dry earth. Every step echoed faintly in the still air. The desert was alive with quiet, but something felt off. Ahead, a cactus leaned oddly, or something leaned against it. Tall, pale, unnatural. I froze. The beam of the flashlight trembled in my hand. The figure did not move. It simply stood draped over the cactus, long limbs bending at impossible angles. Wind whispered through the dry brush. The air smelled of dust and faint decay. I swallowed. Heart hammering softly against my ribs. I shone the light directly at it. The figure's head tilted too far back. Eyes glowed faintly. Soft, pale luminescence. Not fully human, not fully there. The desert fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause, holding its breath. Shadows stretched impossibly long across the sand. I stepped back. The flashlight flickered in my grasp. Every blink seemed to shorten the distance between me and the figure. Its head tilted again. A motion too smooth, deliberate. The air pressed damp and metallic against my skin. Sand shifted softly at its base as if the earth itself were alive. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. Only the whisper of wind brushing against the cactus needles. Soft footsteps behind me? Or the echo of my own panic? The figure remained, motionless, yet aware, waiting. I lowered the flashlight, letting shadows consume it again. Even in darkness, I could feel the glow of its eyes, a faint pulse, almost imperceptible, pressing into my chest. Time stretched. Minutes melted into seconds. The desert air carried an unnameable hum. Every blink revealed the figure subtly closer. Not walking, not running, just leaning forward, patient, deliberate. I tried to retreat. Feet sank into loose sand. The desert resisted softly, grain by grain. The figure remained unmoving, unmoved. I dared not look away, eyes fixed on the glowing orbs. The wind carried faint whispers, unintelligible, around my ears. The air smelled of dry earth, dust, and something metallic like blood. I realized slowly. It was not merely a figure. It was a presence, patient, watching, measuring. The cactus bent slightly in the night wind. Its shadow stretched across the sand. The figure leaned with it, moving in impossible unison. I felt small, alone. I stepped back again, slowly, deliberately. Sand hissed softly beneath my shoes. The desert seemed to breathe around me. Shadows curled closer. Blinking, I watched the eyes fade slightly, only to flare again when I looked directly. A rhythm, deliberate, alive. I dared a final step backward. The figure's glow dimmed just enough to vanish in the darkness. Yet awareness remained. Imprint on the sand, soft pressure in the air, the knowledge that it was still there, waiting. I ran then, feet pounding against dry, resistant sand, breath sharp, metallic in my chest. Wind pressed against me, carrying faint whispers, soft and deliberate. I did not look back. The desert stretched endlessly before me. Shadows bent impossibly. Cacti leaned strangely in the darkness. And in the distance, faint eyes glimmered, patient and unblinking. I reached the trailhead. The flashlight's beam trembled one last time. Silence pressed in. The desert held its breath. And I knew the figure had not moved. It never would. It was waiting. The canyon walls rose like silent witnesses, shadows pooling in every crevice. Night pressed heavy against the rocks, cool and still. Wind whispered faintly through narrow passages, carrying the dry, metallic scent of stone. I had set up camp near a curve where the canyon narrowed. The fire crackled softly, sending pale light flickering across the walls. Every small movement echoed back oddly, stretched, distorted. Footsteps. I took one, careful. The echo returned as running, pounding steps. Faster than mine. Closer than possible, I froze. The fire hummed softly, embers shifting in rhythm with the wind. Every blink revealed movement along the walls, shadows bending impossibly. A cough escaped me. The canyon returned laughter. Soft, faint, deliberate, mocking, unnatural. I stepped forward again. Footsteps echoed back incorrectly, following a rhythm that did not match mine. I whispered my own name. The canyon whispered it back, slower, drawn out, twisted. The air smelled faintly of dust and ozone. Shadows bent at impossible angles. Wind pressed damp against my neck, cool, deliberate, aware. I tried to call out. Only echoes answered. Shouting returned as a whisper. Silence. Then laughter again. Time stretched. Minutes melted into seconds. Every sound I made seemed to draw something closer. Something unseen, watching, patient. I crouched by the fire. Embers hummed softly. The canyon walls seemed to lean toward me. Every echo pressed against the ribs of the rocks, deliberate and alive. A rock shifted in the distance, or maybe it was an echo. I could not tell. The sound came first, then the movement, but always mismatched. I stepped toward the mouth of the canyon. Footsteps returned before mine. Laughter followed after. The wind hummed low, brushing against my ears. The canyon was aware, not merely empty rock, not merely silence. It measured every motion, every breath, every heartbeat. I pressed a hand to the wall. Cold stone, smooth, But beneath it, a faint vibration. Soft, low, deliberate, echoing whispers through my fingertips. I turned slowly. Shadows bent closer, impossible and patient. Embers flickered against shapes that might not exist. The canyon hummed low, almost breathing. I realized slowly. Every sound I made was answered, mirrored, twisted. The echoes were not echoes at all. They were presence. Patient, observant, alive. I whispered my fears into the dark. The canyon whispered back my own voice. Slower, distorted, mocking. The fire flickered. Embers fell into shadow. I felt small, alone, under observation. The walls pressed close with their unseen weight. Wind curled through narrow cracks, bringing the faint smell of dry stone and dust. I dared one final step backward. Footsteps returned before me. Breath returned distorted like it belonged to someone else. Every blink revealed movement just beyond the light. I packed quickly, leaving the fire to die. Each movement echoed back wrong, louder, closer. The canyon had learned the rhythm of my steps. It anticipated me. I ran through the narrow passages. Shadows bent impossibly along the walls. Wind pressed soft and metallic against my ears. Every echo followed. Every heartbeat echoed back slower, heavier. At the canyon's edge, the desert opened again. Silence pressed softly, almost relieved. Yet the echoes lingered, patient, deliberate, unseen. I glanced back once. The walls were empty, yet I could feel them, measuring, watching, waiting. I continued into the open desert, alone. Every step carried the memory of running echoes. Every breath carried the canyon's whispering presence. And I knew it had not forgotten me. It would follow, patient, deliberate, eternal. Night pressed heavy over the desert highway. Wind whispered soft, shifting loose sand across the asphalt. The air smelled faintly of oil and dry earth. I saw the gas station ahead, neon flickering, casting pale light into the fog. Pumps clicked steadily. No cars, no attendants. Only the soft hum of electricity and the scent of fuel. I slowed, tires whispering against asphalt. Wind pressed damp and metallic against the doors. The desert seemed to hold its breath. I stepped out, footsteps soft in the cracked asphalt. The pumps clicked, humming low, deliberate. I lifted the handle. Fuel flowed, smooth and unyielding. I glanced toward the glass doors. Something moved inside. Shadows, just beyond the reflection. Slow, deliberate. But the doors were locked. The neon flickered again. Light danced across the cracked concrete. Shadows bent impossibly along the edges of the station. The hum of the pumps vibrated low in the chest. I approached the glass slowly. Air pressed cool, metallic, alive against my skin. Dust shifted on the floor inside, though no one was there. A shape in the reflection moved slightly, but vanished when I looked directly. Time stretched. Every blink revealed movement at the edge of vision. Shadows leaned closer, patient, deliberate. The wind carried faint whispers, soft and unintelligible. I tried the door again. Locked. No handle, no key, no entry. Only the soft hum of the pumps. I stepped back. Footsteps echoed in the empty space, overlapping, impossible. I glanced at the sky. Stars bright and distant, cold and patient. The pumps continued clicking, humming low. A faint metallic smell pressed against the air. The desert stretched endlessly beyond the asphalt. Shadows bent along the edges of the neon, impossibly. I turned to leave. The reflection in the glass caught my eye. Movement. A figure crouched low, watching. But it was only my own shape. Or was it? Wind pressed soft and cold against my neck. The neon flickered again, revealing empty space. Yet the sense of awareness lingered. Patient, observant, deliberate. I got back into the car. Doors closed with a soft hiss. Tires whispered over asphalt as I drove slowly away. The gas station remained behind me, glowing faint, humming, aware. Every mile stretched into the desert. Shadows pressed at the edges of vision. Wind carried soft whispers, deliberate and alive. Even as I drove, I glanced back. The doors remained locked. The neon flickered, faint, deliberate, and I felt it watching. I drove on, alone. Through the desert night. Every mile, every blink, every breath carried the memory of the empty station. Patient, observing, impossible to escape, and I knew The gas station would be waiting, always there, just beyond reach. Watching, silent, deliberate. The desert lay quiet beneath a sky smeared with pale moonlight. Wind drifted faintly, lifting loose dust across the trail. The air smelled dry, metallic, and alive with the stillness of night. I walked slowly, boots sinking into fine, powdery sand. Footsteps pressed soft, deliberate, leaving trails behind me. Then I saw them, deep animal tracks. Claws pressed into the dust, wide, deliberate. But as I followed them, shapes shifted. The claws gave way to bare human footprints. Step by step, they matched mine, then disappeared mid-stride. I froze. Sand pressed cold against my fingers as I touched the ground. Footprints vanished before my eyes as if the desert itself swallowed them. A soft rustle echoed behind me. Wind carried faint whispers. Not words, not fully, just presence. Alive, patient, deliberate. I returned to my tent. Every step crunched softly, yet echoed strangely. Shadows leaned impossibly against the desert floor. The silence pressed heavy, metallic against my chest. Then came the sound, running feet circling the tent. Soft, rhythmic, impossible to locate. The desert seemed to bend around it, shifting, alive. I pressed my ear to the canvas. Nothing, except my own heartbeat, loud and deliberate. Then, a scuff, faint, closer. Footsteps paused. I dared a slow glance. Nothing. Only the moonlight stretching across the sand. I tried to steady my breath. Wind whispered across the dunes, carrying faint metallic scents. Every blink revealed the faintest movement just beyond the light. Shadows bending impossibly, patient, deliberate. The tracks returned in my mind's eye. Not static, shifting, circling, always closer. Waiting. I stepped out of the tent. Cold sand pressed against my feet, shifting beneath each step. The air hummed faintly, metallic and alive. Footprints appeared again, circling the tent, following the rhythm of my movements. Always patient, always deliberate. I crouched to examine the dust. The animal tracks began again, blending seamlessly into human ones. Each imprint carried awareness, deliberate, observing. I could feel it beneath the grains, the desert itself alive with motion. I tried to run. Feet sank soft into powdery sand. The tracks followed. Shadows pressed at the edges of vision. Wind carried faint whispers, almost my own name. Time stretched. Minutes melted into seconds. Each step forward echoed back distorted, faster, slower, impossible. I could not tell where I ended, and the desert began. I returned to my tent. Every shadow seemed closer now, pressing against the canvas. Footsteps circled relentlessly. Impossible to ignore. Patient, deliberate. I pressed my hands against the fabric, listening. Wind drifted faintly through the cracks. Dust shifted along the floor. Footsteps circled again. Closer, faster, yet always just beyond the edge of sight. I realized slowly, the desert did not belong to me. I belonged to it, to the tracks, to the footprints, to the relentless circling that waited. Patient, deliberate, I stayed inside the tent, breath shallow, metallic against the still air. Every heartbeat echoed in the silence. Every blink carried awareness. The desert moved softly beneath me, patient, observing, impossible to escape. I dozed briefly. Dreams filled with shifting dust, circling footprints, and shadows bending impossibly. When I awoke, the desert was empty, but I knew. The tracks had not vanished. They had only waited, patient, deliberate, and I would feel them again. The desert night pressed heavy, air dry and metallic. Tires whispered over the cracked asphalt as I drove beneath the stars. A low wind stirred loose sand, curling it along the roadside. I passed a row of old telephone poles. Lines stretched across the desert, sagging under the weight of time. A hum rose from the wires, faint at first. Low, almost imperceptible. I slowed. The hum grew louder, pressing soft against the chest. Every mile seemed to vibrate beneath the tires. The desert smelled of dust and metal, alive with the vibration. I stepped from the car. Hands brushed the nearest post. Electricity hummed faintly through my fingers. A voice rose, soft, distant, whispering through the vibration. "Do not look behind!" Goosebumps prickled my arms. The desert seemed to lean closer, waiting. Shadows bent impossibly at the edges of vision. Wind pressed metallic and cold against the neck. I tried to move. Feet pressed soft into sand. The hum thrummed louder through the wires. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the vibration. The voice came again, soft, deliberate. Faint fragments of words, unintelligible but aware. It knew I was here. It measured my movements, patient, deliberate. I glanced behind. Nothing. Only dunes curling into the dark, stretching impossibly into the night. Yet awareness lingered. Something pressed close, just beyond the edge of sight. The wires hummed low, metallic. Wind carried faint whispers across the desert. I pressed my hand again against the post. Vibration rippled through my palm, up my arm. "Do not look behind!" The desert pressed against my feet, grain by grain. Shadows bent along the dunes, impossible, patient. Every blink revealed slight movement at the edges of vision. I stepped back, careful, deliberate. The hum shifted, pulsing faintly, almost alive. Dust lifted softly, curling around the tires and my boots. Every step echoed faintly, yet the vibration followed. I dared one glance behind again. Only emptiness stretched across the dunes. Yet a weight lingered in the air, patient, measuring. The wind whispered, carrying faint metallic scents. Shadows stretched across the desert floor, bending impossibly. The hum in the wires pulsed soft, low, deliberate. I pressed a hand to the other post. Vibration hummed through both palms, low and alive. Whispers threaded through the hum. Faint, unintelligible, but deliberate. It warned. It observed. I turned to leave. Footsteps pressed softly in the sand behind me. Not my own. Not fully, but impossible to locate. The wires hummed, pulsing faster now. Every heartbeat matched the rhythm. Every breath carried the metallic scent of electricity. Every blink revealed shifting shadows. I returned to the car. Doors closed with a soft hiss. Tires whispered over asphalt. The hum from the wires followed faintly, almost into the cabin. Air pressed metallic against my skin. Wind carried whispers faint and deliberate. I drove on. The desert stretched endlessly. The wires receded, yet the hum lingered in my chest. Every mile carried the vibration forward, patient, observant, alive. Even as dawn approached, pale and cold, the hum remained. Every step, every blink, every heartbeat. Remembered. And I knew. The desert, the wires, the whispers. They had marked me. Patient, deliberate, unyielding. The desert had shifted in minutes. Wind rose suddenly, carrying dust. Grit and the taste of dry metal. Sand whipped across my face, filling my eyes, biting at every exposed inch of skin. I struggled to see. The flashlight beam barely cut through the churning storm. Shadows moved with the wind, bending over dunes. Impossible shapes gliding along the ridges. Then I saw them. Eyes. Glowing faint, amber and cold. Staring through the swirling dust. Blinking, but never fully disappearing. Every time the wind dropped, they vanished, only to reappear closer. I froze. Sand hissed around my boots. The wind pressed soft and metallic against my face. Each heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the shifting storm. The eyes multiplied. Faint glimmers in the dust, always at the periphery. Patient, deliberate, watching. I called out. The wind carried my voice back, distorted, slower, hollow. Not my words, but a mimicry. A whispering echo, patient, deliberate, aware. I tried to move. Feet sank into soft, shifting dunes. Sand pressed cold and grainy between toes. Every step toward the truck seemed longer, slower. The eyes, closer. A shadow passed over the storm, larger than any dune should allow. I stumbled, hands brushing against loose rocks and sand. Wind shredded against my skin. Whispers hissed faintly, unintelligible, deliberate. I caught a glimpse of movement near the truck. Something crouched low, unseen, waiting in the swirling dust. Eyes glimmered faintly, reflecting light from my own flashlight. They moved with the wind, stalking, patient. Time stretched. Minutes folded into each other. Every blink revealed shifting patterns in the sand. Every heartbeat carried the rhythm of the storm. I pressed my hands against the door. Cold metal, vibrating faintly from the wind. Sand drifted against the tires, pressing, soft, alive. The eyes were nearer now, circling the truck in impossible angles. I whispered my own name. A faint echo returned, distorted, slower. Eyes glimmered faintly beyond the windshield. Patient, observant. I realized slowly. The sandstorm was not natural. It carried awareness, movement, life. The eyes were part of it. Measuring, stalking, deliberate. Wind shredded around me, filling the cabin with fine dust. I pressed my face against the steering wheel, breath metallic, sharp. The eyes blinked in rhythm with my own pulse. Every glance, every flicker of light, mirrored my movement. I dared to step out. Feet sank into shifting dunes. The wind pressed cold, metallic, alive against my skin. Every step echoed, yet disappeared into the storm. The eyes moved with me. The flashlight flickered. Shadows twisted in impossible directions. The storm hummed softly, deliberately. Whispers pressed against my ears, unintelligible, patient. I ran back to the truck. Sand pressed against the tires, soft, shifting. Wind shredded at my clothes, stinging my face. Eyes glimmered faintly, impossible, always following. I slammed the door. Tires whispered over the sand as I drove slowly into the storm. Wind pressed soft against the windows. The eyes remained, faint amber lights, shifting, circling, patient. Every mile stretched longer. Every blink carried their presence. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the storm. The desert had awakened, aware. I drove on, eyes vanishing only when the storm briefly calmed, returning closer each time. Patient, observant, deliberate. By dawn, pale and cold, the sandstorm softened. Dust settled in ripples across the asphalt. But I knew. The eyes had not left. They lingered, waiting in the dunes. Patient, relentless, impossible to escape. Night pressed heavy over the desert highway. The air smelled faintly of dust and gasoline. A motel appeared, glowing softly under flickering neon, isolated, silent. I pulled into the lot. Tires whispered across cracked asphalt. The building stood empty, too clean, too quiet. Windows reflected pale light, but revealed nothing inside. I stepped out. Wind pressed soft and metallic against my face. Sand drifted across the pavement. A faint hum of electricity vibrated through the neon signs. I reached my door, scratching. Soft, deliberate, coming from the other side. Heart hammering, I leaned closer. A tall man crouched low, pressed against the crack of the door. Old clothes, worn, smelling faintly of sweat and dust. He sniffed softly, deliberate, patient. I froze. The desert night pressed against my neck, cold and metallic. Wind carried faint whispers, unintelligible, deliberate. The man didn't move, only crouched, aware, observing. Shadows pressed long across the asphalt, bending impossibly around him. Eyes glimmered, faint, unblinking, patient. I stepped back slowly. Every movement echoed across the lot, footsteps of my own, and something else. Something heavier, deliberate, watching. The neon flickered. A soft hum vibrated through the pavement. The man remained crouched, still sniffing, aware. He did not speak, did not blink, only waited. I tried the door again, locked. I pressed my ear to the wood. Wind carried faint scratching sounds. The man pressed closer. I stepped back, careful, deliberate. Sand shifted beneath my boots. The air smelled faintly metallic. Every blink revealed impossible shadows bending near the edges of the lot. I dared to glance closer. The man's face, pale, elongated, features stretched unnaturally, eyes glimmered faint amber in the neon. Patient, unblinking, observant. I tried to breathe quietly. Wind pressed against the cabin, sharp, metallic. The man remained, crouched, sniffing, waiting. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the still air. Time stretched. Minutes folded over seconds. Every blink revealed him closer, though the lot remained empty. Impossible shadows bent along the walls. I moved slowly, step by step, back to the car. Sand hissed softly underfoot. Footsteps echoed faintly. Behind me, around me, impossible to locate. The man crouched, still patient, deliberate. I reached the door. Heart hammering, hands shaking. Wind whispered through cracks in the neon. The man did not move. I slammed the door. Tires whispered softly as I drove into the desert night. Wind pressed cold against the windows. Shadows clung to the edges of the asphalt. Every mile stretched longer. Every blink carried the memory of his crouched presence. Every heartbeat echoed against the hum of the neon. The desert had left traces of awareness behind. By the next curve, the motel disappeared. Neon gone, windows dark. Only desert stretched endlessly, yet I knew. The man had not left. Patient, observant, impossible to shake. Every mile I drove, I felt his presence lingering. A crouched awareness waiting in the dark, watching, silent, deliberate. The desert night pressed heavy. Wind carried faint whispers, and somewhere just beyond reach, he crouched, patient, waiting. Night pressed heavy over the desert highway. The tires whispered softly across cracked asphalt. Wind carried faint dust and dry metal pressing against my skin. The radio flickered. Stations cracked and popped in static. Then, a voice, my own, soft, deliberate, describing the drive I was taking. Every detail word for word. Before I'd spoken it aloud, goosebumps rose along my arms. The air pressed metallic against my neck. The desert seemed to hold its breath. I reached for the dial. Static hissed and warped. The voice continued, now whispering faintly about what was ahead. Things I had not yet thought, not yet seen. It knew, aware. I stopped the car. Wind pressed soft against the windows. Shadows bent along the desert floor, impossible, patient. Every blink revealed slight movement at the edges of the headlights. The radio hummed low, vibrating faintly through the seat. Static whispered faint fragments of words, deliberate, unintelligible. I pressed a hand to the dashboard. Vibration hummed soft, alive, metallic. I glanced at the rearview mirror. Shadows twisted along the asphalt behind me. No cars, no movement, only awareness, patient, observant. The voice returned. Not my own, but mimicking me perfectly. Deliberate, knowing, aware of my thoughts, my breath, my heartbeat. I stepped out of the car. Feet sank softly into sand along the edge of the asphalt. Wind carried faint metallic scents pressing against my face. Static hummed through the air, soft and alive. The desert was listening, alive. I raised the radio. The voice repeated a word I had not yet thought. A warning. Not loud, not direct, just deliberate. I tried to move back toward the car. Footsteps echoed, overlapping, impossible to place. Shadows pressed against the edges of vision. Static hummed, vibrating faintly through the ground. I dared a glance behind. The desert stretched empty. Yet awareness lingered. Patient, observant. I lowered the radio. The hum continued, soft, low, deliberate. The desert air pressed metallic and alive against my skin. Wind carried faint whispers in rhythm with my heartbeat. I returned to the driver's seat. Tires whispered softly over asphalt as I drove. Every mile stretched longer than it should. Every blink carried the memory of my own voice echoing from the radio. The desert pressed endlessly on both sides. Shadows clung to the edges of the headlights. Static hummed, faint, low, deliberate. Every breath carried its awareness. I tried to ignore it, pretended the radio was just malfunctioning. But every word, every phrase, every echo followed my thoughts. Patient, deliberate, aware. By dawn, pale and cold, the desert was empty. The radio fell silent, but the memory lingered, soft, humming low, metallic. Every mile I had driven, every heartbeat, every blink, echoed with presence. It had marked me, patient, observant, impossible to escape. The desert stretched endless under a pale moon. Wind stirred loose sand, curling it across the asphalt. Night pressed heavy, dry, and metallic against my skin. I saw it suddenly. A phone booth, cracked glass, peeling paint, standing alone in the middle of nowhere. Neon letters long dead. Yet it hummed faintly, alive. I stepped closer. Sand shifted under my boots, whispering. Wind pressed metallic and cold against my neck. Every step carried the weight of the silence around it. I lifted the receiver. The cord hummed faintly. Static filled the air. Then, a voice. I see you. I froze. The desert was empty behind me. No trees, no rocks, no movement, only the endless stretch of sand. The voice repeated, soft, deliberate, aware. I pressed the receiver closer. Words whispered, unintelligible at first, then deliberate. Every syllable seemed alive, pressing against my ears. Faint footsteps shifted in the sand. Not mine, not fully. Somewhere just beyond sight, I turned slowly. The desert stretched empty. Yet a shadow lingered just beyond the reach of the moonlight. Patient. Watching. I stepped back. Sand hissed beneath my boots. Wind shredded across the desert floor, carrying faint metallic scents. The phone hummed soft, vibrating faintly through the receiver. I dared to glance inside the booth. Glass cracked and fogged, but I could see nothing, no one. Yet presence lingered, deliberate, patient. I whispered my own name. The booth repeated it, slower, deliberate, echoing. Static hummed in rhythm with my heartbeat. The desert pressed against me, alive, aware. I stepped back again. Footsteps echoed softly in the sand. Impossible to locate. Shadows bent impossibly along dunes. Wind carried faint whispers, unintelligible, deliberate. I turned to leave. The desert stretched endlessly, pale and silent. But I felt it, awareness, patient, observant, watching from the edge of vision, waiting. The receiver hummed once more. I see you. Soft, deliberate, impossible to ignore. I returned to the car. Tires whispered softly across the asphalt. Wind pressed cold and metallic against the windows. Every blink carried the memory of the booth. Every breath carried the faint hum of static. By the next curve, the booth was gone. Nothing but sand and desert stretched before me. Yet I knew it had not left. Patient, observant, deliberate. Every mile I drove, I felt its awareness lingering. Every heartbeat carried memory of that voice. Every blink pressed me into the desert's patience. The moon rose higher. Shadows pressed along the dunes. Static hummed faintly, metallic, deliberate. And somewhere beyond sight, something waited. Patient, watching, impossible to escape. The night was cold and still. Stars stretched across the sky, sharp and distant. The desert smelled of dry earth and dust. I sat near the fire, flames crackling softly, sending pale light across the sand. Wind stirred loose grains curling around my boots. Shadows stretched long, bending impossibly along the dunes. A sound broke the silence. Soft yips, faint and distant, coyotes circling the campsite. I listened. The yips repeated, deliberate, patient. Closer now, circling, pacing around the fire. The sound carried a strange cadence, almost deliberate. Then it changed. The yips stretched, warped, becoming something else. Laughter. Faint, hollow, deliberate. Not human, yet not fully animal. The wind carried it across the sand. I froze, heart hammering against my chest. Shadows twisted at the edges of the firelight. Every blink revealed movement just beyond the glow. The coyotes yipped again. Then words. Soft, deliberate, mocking. Almost human, almost aware. I whispered my own name. The desert answered with their laughter. Soft, drawn out, echoing off distant dunes, patient, observant. Footsteps shifted in the sand. Not mine, not fully. The coyotes' shapes moved impossibly between the dunes. Eyes glimmered faintly, amber and aware, reflecting the firelight. I tried to move. Sand pressed soft, grainy, alive beneath my boots. The laughter followed, warped, deliberate. Every breath carried the metallic scent of dust and dry earth. The fire flickered. Shadows bent impossibly, stretching toward me. The coyotes' forms shifted, closer, circling. Every blink revealed faces in the dust, stretching, twisting, almost human. I pressed a hand to the ground. Cold sand, soft beneath my fingers. Vibrations hummed faintly, deliberate. The coyotes' voices echoed through it. Patient, observant, I whispered again, voice trembling. The laughter mimicked, slower, deliberate, echoing in rhythm with my heartbeat. The desert pressed against me, alive with sound, aware, waiting. I tried to stand. Sand shifted beneath me, soft, resisting. Eyes glimmered faintly from the dunes, circling, stalking. The laughter grew faintly louder, deliberate, impossible to ignore. I moved toward the fire. Shadows twisted along the edges of the light. Coyotes yipped, their voices warping into words, then disappearing. Every blink revealed them closer, patient, deliberate. I backed away. Firelight flickered across the desert floor. Wind carried faint metallic scents, pressing against my face. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the shifting shapes. Time stretched. Minutes melted into seconds. The laughter persisted, patient, deliberate. Coyotes, voices, shapes, all circling, observing, aware. I retreated to the tent. Flaps closed with a soft hiss. Sand pressed soft along the canvas. The laughter continued, faint, deliberate, impossibly close. Even as sleep took me, the echoes lingered. Every heartbeat carried their awareness. Every breath pressed against the dry desert air, patient, observant, impossible to escape. By dawn, the coyotes vanished. Only faint paw prints in the dust, impossibly arranged, circling the campsite. And in the still desert air I knew they had not truly gone. Patient, deliberate, waiting. The highway stretched endlessly beneath a sky sharp with stars. Air pressed dry and metallic against my skin. Tires whispered over asphalt, soft, deliberate. Headlights caught movement ahead. A horse, pacing the shoulder, riderless. Hooves pressed soft against the pavement. Sound muted but deliberate. I slowed. Wind carried faint metallic scents. The desert pressed close, silent, patient. In the rearview mirror, something shifted. A pale rider, sitting atop the horse. Eyes glimmered faint amber, unblinking, deliberate. Staring directly back, I froze. Heart hammered against my chest. Shadows bent impossibly at the edges of the headlights. Every blink revealed movement I could not place. The horse's hooves clicked softly against the asphalt. No sound carried forward, only in the mirror. The desert air hummed faintly, metallic, alive. Every breath carried the weight of awareness. I tried to drive past. Headlights washed over the shoulder. The rider remained, unmoving, patient. Wind pressed cold across the dashboard. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the hooves. The horse moved with deliberate grace, almost floating across the pavement. The rider mirrored every subtle shift of my posture. I blinked. Then the figure seemed closer, impossible. The desert had stretched endlessly between us. Yet here it was, aware, observing, deliberate. I whispered my own name. The rider's head tilted slightly. Amber eyes glimmered faintly. Not hostile, not friendly. Only watching, patient. I tried to breathe quietly. Wind shredded across the highway. Shadows twisted along the asphalt, impossible, deliberate. Every blink revealed movement at the edges of my vision. I sped up. The horse and rider kept pace. No sound carried forward. Only in the mirror. Every blink, every breath, every heartbeat. Reflected back, I turned onto a side road. Tires whispered softly over gravel and sand. The highway behind stretched empty. Yet in the mirror, the rider remained, patient, observant. I dared a glance behind. Empty highway. No horse, no rider. Only desert stretching endlessly beneath the stars. But awareness lingered, patient, deliberate. I pressed my foot down. Tires whispered over asphalt. The desert pressed against the windows. Every blink carried the memory of the pale rider. Every breath carried the weight of being watched. By dawn, the highway curved away. The rider had vanished. Yet the memory persisted. Patient, observant, impossible to shake. Even as sunlight touched the desert floor, I felt it. The reflection in the mirror, waiting, aware. Every mile, every heartbeat, every blink, marked, observed, patient, night draped over the desert like a thick, silent cloth. Wind whispered across loose sand, curling along my boots. The fire in my camp sputtered softly, sending pale light flickering across the dunes. Faint music reached me, soft, distant, carried by the wind. Notes stretched and warped, impossible, almost human. I rose slowly, feet pressed into cold, grainy sand. The desert pressed around me, patient, deliberate, aware. Shapes appeared in the distance, silhouettes circling a fire I could not see. They danced, slow, rhythmic, deliberate. But their forms shifted, impossible, fluid. No faces, none. Just outlines of bodies bending, stretching, moving in ways that defied natural limits. I whispered my own name. The silhouettes paused, then continued. Every movement echoed in the sand, soft but deliberate. The music carried with it a vibration that pressed against my chest. I stepped closer. Wind shredded across the dunes, pressing metallic and dry against my skin. Sand drifted along my boots, curling into the firelight. Shapes moved closer, aware, deliberate, patient. The silhouettes swayed around the fire. No eyes, no mouth, just presence. Yet awareness radiated from them. Patient, observing. The music hummed, faintly alive, threading through the desert air. Every blink revealed subtle changes in the shapes. Limbs stretched impossibly, bodies bending, dissolving, reassembling. The fire reflected light across the sand, casting shadows that twisted, alive, deliberate. I tried to retreat. Feet sank into the sand, soft, resisting. Wind pressed against my face, metallic, dry. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the shifting silhouettes. They moved closer. No sound but the music, impossibly soft, impossibly deliberate. I could feel presence brushing against me, patient, aware. The desert held its breath, I whispered again. The silhouettes shifted, mirroring nothing I had seen, but aware of me. Patient, observant, impossible to ignore. I stumbled back to the campfire. Shadows twisted along the edges of the light. Every blink revealed movement I could not follow. The desert stretched endlessly, yet shapes were everywhere, circling, deliberate. I crouched near the fire. Wind pressed soft across my shoulders. Music hummed, faint, metallic, alive. The silhouettes paused, then resumed their endless, impossible dance. Time stretched. Minutes bled into seconds. Every breath carried awareness. Every blink revealed impossible forms. Patient, observant. I dared not move again. The desert held me, pressed against me, alive with shadows and music. Shapes danced endlessly, faceless, deliberate, aware. By dawn, the silhouettes had vanished. The fire sputtered low. The sand settled into quiet ripples, yet awareness lingered, patient, observant, impossible to escape. Even as sunlight touched the dunes, I felt the echo of their dance, the impossible movements, the faceless forms, the patient gaze. Every mile, every heartbeat, every blink, marked, observed, deliberate. The desert night stretched endlessly. Stars glimmered faintly, distant, sharp. Wind pressed cold and dry against my skin. Every step over loose sand whispered softly, deliberate. Far across the dunes, a shadow stood. On the ridge, still, watching. I froze, heart hammering, every pulse echoing in the quiet desert. The shadow remained motionless, patient, deliberate. Minutes passed, or hours. Time lost meaning in the desert air. Every blink revealed the figure closer, though it had not moved. Patient, observant. I whispered my own name. No reply, yet awareness pressed against me, subtle, metallic, alive. Wind carried faint dust across my face, scratching softly, deliberately. I tried to move. Feet sank into shifting sand. Shadows stretched long, bending impossibly along the dunes. The ridge seemed to grow nearer, though I had not walked. The figure shifted slightly, just a tilt of the head. Eyes, faintly glimmering in the pale starlight. Patient, watching, aware. I swallowed. Every breath metallic, dry, sharp. Wind pressed softly across my neck, carrying whispers I could not understand. The desert itself seemed alive. I tried to speak again. Words faltered in the dry air. The shadow remained still. Closer than it should have been, impossible. Patient, observant. I backed away slowly. Sand hissed softly beneath my boots. Wind shredded across the dunes, pressing metallic against my skin. The shadow did not move. Yet awareness followed, pressing closer with every step. I dared a glance behind. Empty desert stretched endlessly. No one. Yet presence lingered in the air. Soft, deliberate, patient. Time stretched again. Minutes bled into silence. Every blink revealed subtle changes along the ridge. Shadows deepened. The watcher tilted its head slightly, aware, deliberate. I tried to breathe quietly. The desert hummed faintly under my boots, shifting sand, soft, deliberate. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the watcher's silent presence. I moved toward my camp. Wind pressed dust against my face, metallic, dry. Shadows bent along the dunes, impossible, observing. Every blink carried memory of the ridge, the figure, the patient gaze. By dawn, pale light stretched across the desert floor. The watcher was gone. The ridge empty, yet awareness lingered. Patient, observant. impossible to shake. Every step, every heartbeat, every blink carried the memory of being observed. The desert held it in quiet, deliberate patience. Every mile, every breath, marked. Even as the sun rose, touching sand and stone, I felt it. Eyes in the distance, watching, patient, deliberate, waiting, unyielding. The abandoned ranch lay silent beneath a pale moon. Wind stirred loose sand and dry leaves, pressing metallic against my skin. The air smelled faintly of dust and rust. I wandered between broken fences and crumbling walls. Every step echoed softly across the empty yard. Shadows stretched long and twisted, bending impossibly around debris. I found the well, a dry stone circle gaping like a black mouth. Cold air rose from it, carrying faint whispers that made my skin crawl. Sand shifted softly around the base as though something moved beneath. I leaned over. Darkness pressed against my eyes, impossibly deep. Then it screamed, not loud, not distant, but close, metallic, shrill, echoing upward from the well. And it was my voice, distorted, twisted, rising in a scream I hadn't made. I stumbled back. Wind shredded across the yard, pressing dry against my face. Shadows twisted impossibly along the ground. Every heartbeat echoed against the hollow scream. I tried again. Leaning over the well, I whispered a question. The darkness answered, not with words, but with echoes, shaped like my own voice calling back, deliberate, aware. Sand shifted beneath my boots. Wind carried faint metallic scents, pressing softly, deliberately. I pressed my hand to the stones. Vibration hummed faint, alive. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the well. I looked down again. Shadows pooled deeper inside the darkness. Impossible shapes seemed to reach, curling toward the edge. My own scream whispered back from below, patient, observant. I tried to step back. Feet sank into shifting sand. Shadows twisted along the yard, impossible, deliberate. The wind carried faint whispers that pressed against my ears. I whispered my name. The well answered with my own voice, distorted, slower. Every blink revealed subtle movement in the stones. Shadows deepened, patient, waiting. I pressed my face close to the edge. Cold stone, rough beneath my fingers. Darkness pressed against my eyes. The scream returned, closer now, deliberate, metallic. Every heartbeat echoed in time with the sound. I stumbled backward again. Wind shredded softly across my face. Shadows twisted along the broken fences. The well remained, patient, deliberate. My voice, trapped in the darkness below, I dared not linger. Every step carried the memory of the scream. Every blink reflected the dark abyss. Sand pressed soft beneath my boots. The wind hummed faintly, metallic, alive. By dawn, the yard was quiet, the stones cold, the well silent. Yet awareness lingered, patient, observant, impossible to escape. Even as sunlight touched the desert floor, I felt it, the scream buried beneath the stones. Every heartbeat, every breath, marked, observed, deliberate. The desert held it in quiet patience, and somewhere below, my voice waited, patient, observant, impossible to ignore. The trail wound through jagged rocks and dry sand, stretching endlessly beneath a pale moon. Wind whispered through crevices, soft and metallic, pressing against my face. The air smelled faintly of dust and sweat. I met him on the path. A lone hiker, tall, normal at first glance, yet something off. His skin caught the moonlight in an unnatural way. Too smooth, too tight across his hands. I stared longer. Fingers stretched longer than they should, joints bending subtly, unnaturally. He smiled faintly. The stretch of his lips too wide, too thin. I blinked, trying to convince myself it was the moon playing tricks. Wind shifted, carrying faint metallic scent from him. I stepped closer. The desert pressed around us, silent, patient, aware. Every heartbeat echoed in my chest. Footsteps soft in the sand, deliberate, almost imperceptible. He shifted his weight. Skin stretched impossibly over his elbows, tight across his cheeks. Every movement precise, deliberate, aware. I swallowed. The air pressed metallic against my throat. I whispered a question. No reply, only the faint sound of the wind and shifting sand. Yet awareness radiated from him, patient, observant. I tried to move past. Feet sank softly into shifting sand. Every step echoed faintly, deliberate. Shadows twisted at the edges of the trail. The desert held its breath. I dared a glance back. He had not moved far, yet eyes glimmered faint, unblinking, aware. Skin stretched tight across his face. Every blink revealed subtle shifts, impossible, deliberate. I whispered my own name. No answer, only presence. Patient, observant. Wind shredded across the dunes. Dust pressed against my boots and face. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with his quiet awareness. Shadows bent impossibly along the rocks. He mirrored me in subtle, unnatural ways. I tried to speak again. Words faltered in my throat. Skin stretched faintly as he tilted his head. Eyes glimmered faint amber in the moonlight. Patient, observant. I quickened my pace. Feet sank softly in the sand. Every blink carried memory of the tight, unnatural skin. Every breath carried metallic awareness. The desert pressed around me, alive, deliberate. By dawn, he was gone. No footprints in the sand, no shadow. Yet memory lingered, patient, observant, impossible to shake. Even as sunlight touched the dunes, I felt it. The stretch of skin, the unnatural awareness. Every blink, every heartbeat, every step. Marked, observed, deliberate. The desert held it quietly, patiently, waiting, unyielding, impossible to escape. The desert night was vast and empty. Stars stretched across the sky, sharp and distant. Wind carried dry dust across my skin, pressing metallic and cold. I noticed it first as a pale glow, flickering faintly, hovering just beyond the dunes. A light, soft and deliberate, drifting like it had awareness. I paused. Feet sank softly into sand. Wind pressed against my face, carrying faint metallic scents. The desert seemed to hold its breath. The light moved. Not with the wind, not with natural drift. It followed me, patient, deliberate. I quickened my pace. Sand whispered beneath my boots. Every blink revealed the glow closer, yet never too near. The desert air hummed faint, metallic, alive. I stopped. The light paused. Suspended in the air, just beyond reach. Every heartbeat echoed against the stillness. The desert held me in awareness. I whispered my own name. No answer, only the soft glow. Patient, deliberate, aware, I ran. Sand shifted underfoot, grainy, soft, resisting. The light followed, drifting smoothly over the dunes. Every step I took, it mirrored, always just beyond reach. Patient, observant. Wind shredded across my shoulders, dry, metallic. Every blink carried memory of the pale glow. Every breath pressed against awareness. Shadows twisted along the dunes, impossible, deliberate. I dared a glance behind. The desert stretched empty. No footprints, no shape, no movement. Yet the glow hovered, patient, deliberate, unyielding. I tried to hide. Behind rocks, behind dunes, crouching low. Wind carried faint metallic scents, pressing against my neck. The glow shifted, finding me, aware, deliberate. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with its movement. Time stretched. Minutes bled into seconds. Every blink revealed subtle approach. Every breath carried pressure. Patient, observant, impossible to ignore. I whispered a prayer. The light dimmed briefly, then brightened again, deliberate. Every movement of mine echoed in the desert, mirrored, tracked. The sand beneath me hummed faintly, vibrating soft, alive. I pressed on, walking now, cautious, deliberate. The light hovered ahead, pacing my steps. Every blink revealed its awareness, patient, unblinking. Shadows bent along dunes, impossibly, silently. By dawn, the desert was pale and cold. The light hovered still, faint, distant. Yet awareness lingered. Patient, observant, impossible to shake. Even as the sun rose, touching sand and stone, I felt it. Presence, hovering just beyond sight. Every blink, every heartbeat, every step. Marked, observed, deliberate. The desert held it quietly, patiently, waiting, unyielding, impossible to escape. The desert night pressed close, cool and dry against my skin. Stars flickered faintly above, distant, sharp, indifferent. Wind carried soft grains of sand across my boots and clothes. I stopped. A faint vibration hummed beneath my feet, soft, subtle, almost like a heartbeat. I knelt, pressed my ear to the sand. Whispers rose. Soft, layered, deliberate, impossible to place, but clear enough. Calling my name, I pulled back. Heart hammered against my ribs. Every blink revealed shadows twisting along the dunes. The air smelled faintly metallic, pressed against my face, alive. I leaned closer again. The voices became words, deliberate, aware. Multiple voices layered, echoing. Soft chants rising in rhythm with my heartbeat. My own name repeated over and over, faint, deliberate. I tried to stand. Sand shifted beneath my boots, soft, resisting. Wind shredded across the desert floor. Shadows bent impossibly around dunes, stretching toward me. Every blink revealed movement just beyond sight. I whispered a question. The voices answered, soft, deliberate. Not human, yet echoing familiar tones. Every syllable pressed metallic against my ears. I pressed my hand to the sand, cold, grainy, alive beneath my fingers. Vibrations hummed faintly, deliberate, echoing the whispers. Patient, observant. I dared a glance around. The desert stretched empty. No shapes, no footprints. Only awareness pressing against me, impossible to ignore. The voices rose slightly, chanting my name in unison. Soft, deliberate, layered. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with their call. The wind shredded faintly, carrying dust across my face. I stepped back cautiously. Sand hissed beneath my boots. Shadows bent impossibly along the dunes. Every blink carried memory of whispers. Deliberate, aware. I whispered again, trembling. The voices echoed, slower now, deliberate, almost patient. Every breath carried metallic pressure. Every heartbeat pressed against awareness. I tried to move, walking softly, carefully away from the spot. Sand shifted beneath me, soft, deliberate. The voices followed, soft, rising, calling my name, layering together, patient, observant. Time stretched. Minutes dissolved into endless seconds. Every blink revealed subtle shifts in the desert floor. Every footstep carried memory of whispering voices beneath. Soft, deliberate, unyielding. By dawn, the desert lay pale and cold. The whispers faded, but awareness lingered. Patient, observant, impossible to shake. Every mile, every heartbeat, every blink. Marked, observed, deliberate. Even as sunlight touched the dunes, I could feel them beneath. Soft, layered voices, patient, deliberate. Waiting, watching, impossible to escape. Night pressed heavy across the desert. Stars shimmered distant, sharp, indifferent. Wind carried dust and the faint metallic scent of dry sand. Every step whispered softly beneath my boots. I saw it first at the edge of the firelight. A lone coyote moving carefully, silently. Eyes glimmering faint amber, reflecting the pale flames. It watched me, patient, deliberate, aware. I froze. Wind shredded across the dunes. Shadows bent impossibly along the sand. The coyote's body twitched, movements too precise, too deliberate. Not quite natural. It stepped closer. Every footfall soft, deliberate, measured. Its head tilted, ears twitching. The air smelled faintly metallic, pressed against my face. Patient, observant. I whispered my own name. The coyote tilted its head further. And then it smiled. Not a normal coyote smile. Too wide, impossible. Its lips stretched, faintly human, twisting over sharp teeth. Faint movement, deliberate awareness in every twitch of muscle. I stumbled backward. Sand hissed softly beneath my boots. Wind shredded across my shoulders. Every blink revealed the smile closer, impossible, deliberate. I tried to retreat. The coyote followed, not running, just gliding silently over the sand. Every step measured, echoing the rhythm of my heartbeat. Patient, observant, I whispered again, trembling. The smile widened slightly. Impossible, deliberate. Eyes glimmered faint, intelligent, aware. The desert pressed against me, alive, metallic, insistent. I crouched low. Shadows twisted at the edges of the firelight. Every blink revealed subtle shifts in the sand, shapes moving impossibly. The coyote's body twitched again, smile widening. Patient, deliberate. I dared a glance at its eyes. Intelligence there, awareness, not human, not animal. yet deliberate, observant, impossible to ignore. I tried to run. Sand shifted beneath me, grainy, soft, resisting. Wind shredded across the dunes, pressing metallic and cold. The coyote followed silently, gliding, patient, deliberate. Every blink carried memory of the impossible smile. Time stretched. Minutes melted into endless seconds. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the twitching body, the impossible grin, patient, observant, impossible to shake. By dawn, the desert lay pale and silent. The coyote vanished. No footprints, no shadow, yet memory lingered, embedded in every heartbeat. Patient, deliberate. Even as sunlight touched the dunes, I felt it. The twitch of a body, the stretch of a grin, the intelligent awareness. Every blink, every breath, every step. Marked, observed, deliberate. The desert held it quietly, patiently, waiting, unyielding, impossible to escape. The desert stretched endlessly, dark and silent beneath a pale moon. Wind whispered across loose sand, pressing metallic and cold against my skin. Tires whispered softly over the cracked asphalt. Ahead, the road seemed to shimmer. Faint, wavering, impossible. I blinked. The asphalt ahead disappeared. Sand replaced the road. Endless dunes rolled where the highway should have been. Soft, grainy, impossible. Every heartbeat echoed against the quiet desert. I checked the rearview mirror. The highway behind had vanished too. Nothing but sand and faint starlight stretching endlessly. Patient, observant, I pressed the accelerator. Tires whispered over sand, soft, deliberate. The dunes shifted beneath me, almost alive. Wind shredded across the car, metallic, cold. Every blink revealed the impossibility closer. I tried to steer. Sand pressed against the wheels, grainy, resistant. Shadows bent along the dunes, impossible, deliberate. The desert seemed aware, pressing softly, insistent. I whispered my own name. No answer. Only the soft hiss of sand under tires. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the shifting dunes, patient, observant. I stopped the car. Silence pressed around me, metallic, dry. The road behind and ahead vanished completely. Sand stretched in every direction, soft, grainy, alive. I stepped out. Feet sank into soft dunes. Wind shredded across my face. Every blink carried memory of the vanished asphalt, deliberate, impossible. I turned in circles. No trace of the highway. No sign of tires, no markings, only shifting sand, bending shadows, the faint metallic scent of desert wind. Patient, observant. I whispered again, trembling. The desert answered with a faint vibration beneath my boots. Grainy sand pressed soft, deliberate, alive. Every heartbeat echoed against the impossible stretch of dunes. Time stretched. Minutes dissolved into endless seconds. Every blink revealed subtle shifting of the sand. Every breath carried pressure, deliberate, patient. Impossible to escape. I walked forward slowly. Soft dunes swallowed my footprints. Shadows twisted at the edges of my vision. The desert seemed aware of every movement, every heartbeat. Patient, observant. By dawn, pale light touched the sand. The vanished road remained absent. Only dunes stretching endlessly, yet awareness lingered. Patient, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Even as sunlight warmed the desert floor, I felt it. The road had vanished, but the desert held memory of it. Every blink, every heartbeat, every step, marked, observed, deliberate. The desert waited quietly, unyielding, patient, aware, impossible to escape. The desert night pressed close, cool and dry against my skin. Stars stretched sharp and distant above, indifferent. Wind whispered through dunes, soft, deliberate, metallic against my face. I noticed the bones first, scattered across the sand, arranged in spirals impossibly precise. White and bleached, the edges catching faint moonlight. Every circle perfect, deliberate, patient. I stepped closer. Sand shifted beneath my boots, grainy, soft. Wind pressed against my neck, metallic, alive. Every heartbeat echoed softly across the dunes. I knelt beside the spirals, bones cold beneath my fingers. Pattern deliberate, aware. I tried to trace the arrangement, but it shifted subtly under my touch. Soft scratching sounded from the sand behind me. I froze. Footsteps? No, something different. Grainy shifts, deliberate, echoing my heartbeat. Patient, observant. I turned slowly. Nothing. Only dunes stretching endlessly beneath the pale moon. Yet I felt awareness pressing against me. Every blink carried memory of movement beneath the sand. I whispered my own name. No answer. Only faint, deliberate rustling, soft, patient. The bones were being rearranged. I watched. Each spiral shifted subtly, impossibly precise. Sand pressed against my boots as if something moved beneath. Soft, deliberate, patient. I tried to step back. Feet sank into soft dunes. Wind shredded across my face, metallic, alive. Every heartbeat echoed with the soft, deliberate movements in the sand. I whispered again, trembling. The bones shifted faster, rearranging into spirals I could not follow. Every blink revealed impossible precision, patient, observant. I crouched low. Shadows twisted along the dunes, impossible, deliberate. The desert seemed alive, pressing against me, aware. Every breath carried metallic weight. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the moving bones. I dared to touch one again. Grainy sand pressed soft beneath my fingers. The spiral shifted subtly, as though reacting to my presence. Patient, deliberate, impossible to shake. I stepped back, careful, deliberate. Sand swallowed my footprints. The spirals continued rearranging, soft, deliberate, aware. Every blink carried memory of movement beneath the dunes. Every breath pressed metallic against my skin. By dawn, the desert lay pale and silent. The bones rested in new spirals, impossibly precise. Yet awareness lingered. Patient, observant, impossible to escape. Every step, every heartbeat, every blink, marked, observed, deliberate. Even as sunlight touched the dunes, I felt it, the soft movement beneath the sand. The deliberate spirals, patient, unyielding, impossible to ignore. The desert night was still, heavy, and dry against my skin. Stars glimmered faintly, distant, sharp. Wind pressed metallic and cold across my face. I heard it first. A voice, faint and trembling, calling my name. Soft, deliberate, impossible. I froze, heart hammering. The voice sounded like my friend, but I was alone. No footprints, no shape, no movement. I whispered back. Silence answered. Only faint wind shifting loose sand across the dunes. Yet awareness pressed against me. Soft, deliberate, patient. The voice called again, closer this time. Faint metallic undertones under the familiar timbre. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the sound. I stepped forward cautiously. Feet sank into soft, grainy sand. Wind shredded across my shoulders, carrying faint dust and metallic scent. Every blink revealed the desert stretching impossibly around me. I whispered my friend's name. The voice answered again, closer, deliberate, aware, yet impossible, echoing from nowhere and everywhere. Soft footsteps pressed against the dunes, impossible to locate. I spun around. Nothing. Only shadows bending along the sand. Every heartbeat pressed metallic against my chest. The voice repeated again, soft, deliberate, calling my name. I tried to run. Sand shifted beneath my boots, soft, grainy, resisting. The voice followed, echoing every step, deliberate, patient, observant. I crouched low, listening. The desert hummed faint beneath my fingers, alive, deliberate. Every blink revealed subtle shadows stretching impossibly. The voice whispered again, impossibly close, impossible to ignore. I pressed my hand to the sand. Vibration hummed faint, metallic, deliberate. Awareness pressed through the dunes, echoing each heartbeat. Every breath carried the impossible echo of my friend. Time stretched. Minutes dissolved into endless seconds. Every step, every blink, every heartbeat. Marked, observed, deliberate. By dawn, the desert lay pale, still and silent. The voice faded into distance, patient, deliberate. Yet awareness lingered, pressing metallic against my chest. Patient, observant, impossible to shake. Even as sunlight touched the sand, I felt it. The hollow call lingering in the dunes. Every blink, every heartbeat, every step, marked, observed, deliberate. The desert held it quietly, patiently, waiting, unyielding. impossible to escape. The desert night stretched endlessly, cool and dry against my skin. Stars flickered faintly above, distant and sharp. Wind carried soft grains of sand across my boots and clothes, metallic and alive. I saw them first. Lights, hovering across the mesas, drifting too slowly to be cars, too high to be humans. Soft, deliberate, glowing, faint amber in the pale darkness. I froze. Heart hammering. Every blink revealed subtle movement, shadows shifting impossibly with the lights. Patient, observant. I stepped closer to the edge of the mesa. Sand shifted softly beneath my boots. Wind shredded across my shoulders, dry and metallic. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with the floating lights. The lights moved closer. Not in straight lines, not naturally. Gliding, deliberate, aware. Impossible to ignore. I whispered my own name. No answer. Only the soft hum of the desert, the faint vibration under my boots. The lights pulsed faintly in response, deliberate, patient. I squinted. Closer now, I realized, these were not lanterns. Not any human-made light. Shapes moved within, vague silhouettes glowing faintly, almost humanoid, patient, observant. I tried to back away. Sand hissed beneath my boots. Shadows twisted impossibly along the mesas. Every blink carried memory of the glowing figures. Deliberate, aware. I whispered again, trembling. The figures glided closer, slow, deliberate. Wind carried metallic scents, pressing against my face, alive. Every heartbeat echoed in rhythm with their movement. I crouched low. Shadows bent at impossible angles along the desert floor. Lights pulsed faint, deliberate, aware. The air hummed softly around me, alive, patient. I dared a glance closer. One figure separated from the lights, glowing faintly, moving impossibly smooth. Closer, closer. Its shape impossible to fully discern. Patient, observant. I tried to run. Sand swallowed my boots, soft, grainy, resisting. The light glided silently behind me, deliberate, unyielding. Every blink carried memory of its impossible presence. Time stretched. Minutes dissolved into endless seconds. Every step, every heartbeat, every blink, marked, observed, deliberate. By dawn, the desert lay pale and still. The lights vanished, retreating across the mesas. No trace remained, no shadow, no shape. Yet awareness lingered, patient, observant, impossible to shake. Even as sunlight touched the desert floor, I felt it. The glow, the presence, the impossible gliding shapes. Every blink, every heartbeat, every step, marked, observed, deliberate. The desert held them quietly, patiently, waiting, unyielding, impossible to escape. The desert night was quiet, almost unbearably still. Stars shimmered faint, distant, indifferent. Wind carried soft grains of sand, pressing metallic against my face. I saw it ahead, a single gas pump standing alone in the desert, faintly glowing, pale against the darkness. No station, no lights, no signs. Only the pump humming softly, deliberate. I stepped closer. Sand shifted beneath my boots, grainy, soft. Wind shredded across my shoulders. Every heartbeat echoed in the desert, soft, deliberate. I lifted the handle. Cold metal pressed against my palm. The gauge moved. But no fuel flowed. Only vibration, subtle, deliberate, like something on the other end was aware. I looked around. Shadows stretched across the dunes. Wind whispered faint, metallic, alive. The desert pressed close, patient, observing. I tried again. Pump handle warm beneath my fingers. The hum grew slightly, deliberate, insistent. Sand shifted beneath my boots, soft, alive. Every blink carried memory of impossibility. I whispered softly. No answer. Only the subtle vibration of the pump, deliberate, aware. Every heartbeat echoed against the desert, metallic, pressing. I stepped back. Sand hissed beneath my boots. Shadows twisted at the edges of vision. The pump remained, humming softly, patient, deliberate. I tried to leave. Every step carried memory of its presence. Wind shredded faintly, metallic and alive. Every blink revealed the pump, humming, deliberate, aware, patient, observant. I dared a glance to the shadows. Something waited nearby, just beyond sight. Impossible to discern fully. Patient, observant. Every heartbeat echoed against awareness. Time stretched. Minutes dissolved into endless seconds. Every blink, every heartbeat, every step, marked, observed, deliberate. By dawn, the desert lay pale and still. The pump remained, glowing faintly, humming softly. No station, no structure, no sign. Yet awareness lingered. Patient, observant, impossible to shake. Even as sunlight touched the dunes, I felt it, the vibration beneath my fingers. The metallic hum, deliberate, patient. Every blink, every heartbeat, every step, marked, observed, deliberate. The desert held it quietly, patiently, waiting, unyielding, impossible to escape. The desert night was quiet, heavy and dry against my skin. Stars shimmered distant, sharp, indifferent. Wind carried soft grains of sand, metallic and cold, pressing against my face. I noticed it first, a faint echo of my own footsteps. Soft, deliberate, perfectly mirroring mine. Every blink revealed nothing. Yet the rhythm continued, patient, observant. I whispered my own name. No answer, only the soft hum of sand shifting beneath my boots. Yet awareness pressed close, deliberate, patient. I stopped. The echo stopped. A pause. Deliberate, careful. Every heartbeat thundered against the quiet desert. I turned slowly. Nothing. Only shifting shadows, bending impossibly across dunes. Yet breath pressed against my neck, soft, familiar, impossible. I whispered again. A rasped inhale answered me. Not mine, yet impossibly like mine. Patient, observant, I ran. Sand hissed beneath my boots, grainy, soft, resisting. Every blink revealed shadows shifting just beyond sight. The breath followed, matching my every movement, soft, deliberate, unyielding. I stumbled, falling to my hands. Grainy sand pressed into my palms. Wind shredded across my shoulders, metallic, alive. The echo of my breath came again, rising, deliberate, patient. I dared a glance behind. Shadows stretched impossibly long. And there it was, a figure, indistinct, pale, skin stretched tight over impossible angles. Every blink carried awareness, deliberate, observant. I whispered my name, trembling. The Skinwalker mimicked it, rasping softly from its own mouth. Every word echoed, impossibly precise, patient, deliberate. I tried to rise. Sand shifted beneath me, soft and resisting. The air pressed metallic against my skin. Every heartbeat carried the echo of my own movement. The desert itself seemed alive, aware, watching. I pressed forward slow, careful. Every step measured, deliberate. The Skinwalker mirrored perfectly, patient, unyielding. Every blink revealed its impossible presence. Every breath carried metallic weight. Time stretched. Minutes dissolved into endless seconds. Every heartbeat, every blink, every step, marked, observed, deliberate. By dawn, pale light touched the desert floor. The Skinwalker had vanished. No shadow, no footprints, no shape. Yet awareness lingered, patient, observant, impossible to shake. Even as sunlight warmed my face and sand, I felt it. Soft, deliberate breaths echoing my own. Every blink, every heartbeat, every step, marked, observed, deliberate. The desert held it quietly, patiently, waiting, unyielding, impossible to escape.